What's up, YouTube and all you King Song and Gotway enthusiasts and all haters? This is V coming at you to give you the skinny on a traumatic experience most EUC riders will encounter that will leave them clutching their pearls, clapping their cheeks, grabbing the air, dropping their chins, bulging of their eyes, and ultimately causing heart palpitation, which will leave them grabbing their chest and screaming, "Oh, do you hear that, Elizabeth? I'm coming to join you." And that is this thing we call the shimmies, also known to some as the tank slapper, death wobbles, and the all too familiar term we in the EUC community can identify with, the wobble. Although there are a host of videos online that depicts a rider's experience with gliding through the wobble, none bother to break down the wobble in its simplest form, nor verbally explain how a rider can all but avoid the wobble, if only by applying certain techniques. I mean, let's face it, the wobble is a necessary evil in our attempt at pushing these wheels to their maximum cruising speed, or within a half of a kilometer of a cutout. Although that's not the only basis for the wobble, it is the foundation for which the wobble manifests itself. You see, the wobble is a subset of speed. Speed is the catalyst for the wobble. Without it, there is no wobble. So now that we have somewhat of an understanding as to what spawns the wobble, let's rewind the tape to the beginning so we can break down the wobble in its simplest form, so with best practices and certain techniques, we can control the wobble. What are wobbles, you say? Well, wobbles are nothing more than a minor disturbance to the oscillation of the wheel that causes it to pull to one side. A classic illustration of this can be observed in a shopping cart. Disturbances into the inertia of a wheel can come about due to certain variables. The wheel is out of balance, imperfections in the roadways, or the misalignment of a rider. And, oh yeah, let's not forget the wind. Because of the amount of freedom in the steering of the wheel, and of late, the lack of dampening, for you people that are not mechanically inclined, that means struts and or shock absorbers, wobbles are an ever-present danger to riders. Now, suffice it to say, if you know your riding capabilities, you can avoid the wobbles altogether. But what's the fun in knowing that? Yeah, you haters, we know, injury and or worse, buzz killers. There's something to be said of the minority of riders that continue to push these wheels beyond their riding capabilities, even in light of the inherent risk, and that is, repetition is the mother of learning, the father of action, which makes it the architect of accomplishment. In the years of riding EUCs and through trials and tribulations, as well as my observations into the best practices of owning these wheels, I have gained enough insight into how to avoid some of the pitfalls associated with the wobble. I will gloss over some of those best practices and then delve into techniques that can assist you on gliding through the wobble. Although these practices and techniques have helped me to glide through the wobble, and under ideal gliding conditions have all but staved off the wobble, these practices and techniques are not all inclusive and may not work for your particular gliding style. So take from it what you can. It is my hope to reach one, teach one. First on our list of best practices are maintenance checks. All too often, we get so caught up in the hype of our gliding that we forget the all-important and necessary aspect of owning these wheels, and that is the periodic maintenance checks. Checking the tires for wear and the PSI level, along with the rim for damage and for misalignment, can help prevent the wobble under normal gliding conditions. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Second on our list of best practices is riding gear. Of all the talks of the proper riding gear, shoes are the overlooked accessory. Because EUCs are controlled by the rider acts as a steering wheel and the dampening for these wheels. And as such, most, if not all steering, is done with the lower half of the rider's body. Since the wheel is the closest to the feet, ankles, and knees, most of the EUC's response is transmitted through the same. With that being said, proper shoes that support the ankle is paramount because proper balance depends on the manner in which the body is supported in stable equilibrium. A balanced rider creates the proper alignment for which the likes of a wobble isn't a threat. These next couple of techniques I'll be discussing are techniques that are used when gliding on an EUC and the rider is going in or is already in full-blown wobble mode. The first on the list is shifting of one's weight to one side. Because a rider acts as a counterbalance on the wheel when it is in motion, any minor disturbances can disrupt that balance. For me, because I fancy riding on one leg, I found in going into a wobble or being in full-blown of a wobble, shifting my weight to one side will force the wheel up against the weighted side of my calf, restricting the free play of the wheel, forcing it into submission. In recreating this wobble, I'm demonstrating the shifting of my weight by lifting one leg, but in reality, I would not lift the leg, but shift my weight. I found this technique to work at high speeds and in low speeds. The second technique is squeezing the wheel and leaning back. This method helps to stabilize the free play in the wheel. However, at high speeds, this technique is ineffective at controlling the wobble and if not done properly and with precision, can lead to an accident. This method should be left to the more skilled riders at higher speeds. The third technique is squatting. Squatting applies a downward force onto the pegs, which can result in the redirection of the wobble. Quite frankly, my skill sets on this method to stop the wobble is as an observer of those individuals who fancy this technique. In my observation, this technique can work for high and low speeds. The fourth technique is posturing. Key to any and all wobble control is balance. Once the balance is off and speed is introduced into the mix, you open Pandora's box for the wobble. Because our body acts as a dampening for these wheels, when there is a misalignment to the wheel, all it takes is a minor disturbance to increase the misalignment. And depending on the severity of the misalignment will be indicative of the severity of the wobble. So always ensure your posturing is properly aligned with the wheel by ensuring the crotch forms a perfect triangle with the wheel. If caught going into the wobble, this technique will work like a charm. It is not recommended to adjust posturing in extreme cases because this self-correct technique will only serve to antagonize the wobble. In this clip, my body is misaligned. As I carve, the wind pushes against me, sending me into a wobble. I quickly adjust my alignment and the wheel settles out of the wobble. Because the underlying goal of controlling the wobble is reducing the speed, I didn't use it as one of the techniques because truth be told, anyone riding an EUC should have this technique down to a science. So, however a rider decreases his or her speed is the technique they'll use to slow down their wheel to gain control of it in a wobble. In closing, a best defense is a good offense. In our quest to get the most out of our enjoyment of gliding on our EUCs, some of us tend to push the envelope that has the potential for a traumatic experience, and in this case, it would be the wobble. Although an unavoidable experience nonetheless, one cannot expect, with the stars properly aligned, that the wobble will not grace us with its presence. Shit happens. This we know. So with that being said, the next time you find yourself going into a wobble or you're in a wobble, expect the best, plan for the worst, and prepare to be surprised. You guys know what time it is. Show your girl some love. Hit that like button. Subscribe, comment, good, bad, or indifferent. So until next time, guys, deuces.